Ready for a deep dive into consciousness. We've got a scientific paper, A&D, a spiritual text, both exploring different levels of awareness. Should be interesting to see where this goes.
Yeah, it's wild how these two totally different perspectives, one from like the lab and the other, well, more mystical, kind of point to the same thing, that consciousness might be way more than we think it is.
Totally. So the research paper, it's called Reflexivity Gradient Consciousness, Knowing Itself, dives right into this idea of non-dual awareness. Basically, they're saying it's this pure awareness where there's no you separate from what you're experiencing.
It's like, how do I explain this? Think about trying to see your own eyes.
You can't, not directly.
Right. You can see reflections, but not the eyes themselves. They're what's doing the seeing. This paper is suggesting non-dual awareness works kind of like that. It's always there, but super hard to directly grasp.
They say this non-dual awareness exists on like a spectrum. Sometimes it's implicit, like when you're so zoned into something that you're not even thinking about being aware. And then there are those moments when it's super obvious, like bam, that self-aware feeling is crystal clear.
And get this, they think a part of your brain, the precuneus, might be responsible for it all.
The precuneus.
Yeah, it's involved in self-awareness, so they're suggesting it could be the central hub for this whole being aware of being aware thing.
Wow. Okay, so we've got the scientific perspective on these levels of awareness. Now let's jump over to the spiritual text, the 4 states of consciousness. It lays out a totally different framework for these levels.
It starts with Jagrothavastha, which is basically our everyday waking consciousness, dealing with the material world, all that jazz.
Then there's Swapnavasta, the dream state. And this text says that's where your subconscious mind taps into something, divine.
And it gets even trippier from there. Next up is Prajanavasta, a state of pure consciousness that you can supposedly reach through deep meditation. They describe it as this profound feeling of oneness, like you completely lose the sense of separation between you and the universe.
Whoa, that's intense. So we've got this scientific paper mapping out the brain stuff, and then the spiritual text giving us like a guidebook to actually experience these different states ourselves.
It's so cool how both sources, even though they're coming from such different places, end up pointing to these levels of consciousness beyond our normal everyday experience. It's like the science is mapping the territory, and the spiritual text is giving us the directions on how to get there.
Okay, let's get into this anomalous cognition thing. Specifically, they were looking at anomalous information anticipation, or AIA. So like having a hunch about something before it happens.
Yeah, but it goes deeper than just a hunch. A lot of people brush it off as coincidence or intuition, but these researchers, they wanted to see if they could actually make it happen in the lab.
And they used subliminal images, random dots moving around, and EEGs to do it. Sounds kind of out there.
It was pretty wild. They showed people these super fast flashes of pictures, too quick to really see,
Subliminal stuff.
Exactly. Some were positive images, some negative, some just neutral.
So they're messing with people's emotions without them even knowing. But how does that connect to seeing the future?
Okay, so after the subliminal images, they had people watch these dots moving on a screen. Sometimes the dots were random, but sometimes they'd move in a specific direction. And the big question was, would those hidden emotional cues, the images, change whether someone could guess which way the dots would go?
Whoa, and could they?
Hold on, it gets even weirder. The results kind of threw a wrench in how we usually think about learning.
Yeah.
Like, they basically designed the experiment to go against the rules of classical learning.
Why would they do that?
Because they thought this type of learning, if it's real, might act more like quantum physics, rather than how our brains normally work.
Quantum physics? Like, are we saying our brains can tap into some cosmic internet or something?
I know it sounds crazy, right? But think about entanglement. That's where two particles are linked no matter how far apart they are.
Yeah.
You change one, the other changes instantly, like magic. And then there's non-locality, which basically says information doesn't have to be stuck in one place or time.
Okay, so are they saying our brains might be using those quantum physics ideas, entanglement and non-locality, to learn stuff in a way that just like breaks the rules?
Yeah. They call it quantum-like learning. And even though it sounds crazy, the results were really interesting. They came up with a theory called non-local plasticity theory, or NPT, to connect traditional neuroscience to this whole quantum possibility.
NPT. Break that down for me. What is non-local plasticity?
It's like this, they're saying all this unconscious learning could be changing our brains physically, like rewiring them, that neuroplasticity. And these physical changes, they're saying that might be what allows for things like, knowing the future.
Our brains are physically changing from information we don't even know we're taking in. That's wild. How did they even test that?
All right, so they had three groups of people. One group did Sudoku puzzles while they had their brain waves measured with the EEG. Another group just chilled with their eyes closed. And the last group, they did the relaxation thing and then that subliminal image and dot watching test.
Gotta watch it.
The people who relaxed and then did the subliminal test, they were way better at guessing which way the dots would go, even though they had no clue why.
No way. What about their brainwaves? Did the EEGs show anything?
Yep. The people who were good at predicting the dots, they had something in common. The parts of their brains related to being chill and alpha brainwaves, those areas were super active.
Interesting. So, like, being relaxed somehow let them be more open to this anomalous information, like they were primed for it.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Maybe when we're relaxed, we can tune into these like hidden ways of knowing.
It's mind-blowing to think our brains might be able to learn and know things in ways that, like, totally change what we thought was possible. So, where do we even go from here? If this quantum-like learning is real, what can we do with it?
That's the big question, right? It's still early days for this kind of research, but I mean, the possibilities are huge. What if we could use this unconscious learning to like grow as people,
Yeah.
to boost our intuition or creativity?
It's exciting and kind of freaky at the same time, you know? Like, what if we've all got this untapped potential just sitting there? Makes you think about what consciousness really is.
For sure. It makes you question everything we think we know.
Yeah.
Science is always focused on the stuff we can measure and see, but now we're getting these little hints that consciousness might be a force of its own, not just something our brains produce.
And that takes us back to that spiritual text, doesn't it? Those higher states of consciousness, the feeling of being connected to everything. Maybe it's not just some mystical mumbo jumbo. Maybe it's a peek into how things really are.
It's a pretty wild thought, isn't it? What if the stuff we call anomalous is just us tapping into the true potential of consciousness? There's a whole lot more to uncover here.
Like we're standing at the edge of something brand new, trying to understand the mind and how it fits into the universe. Whoa.
And the best part, every answer just leads to more questions. But those are the questions that make us keep searching, keep wondering, keep taking these deep dives.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's what we're all about here. Keep those minds open and those questions coming, because we'll be back again soon with another deep dive.